Hi, a very good evening, viewers. I'm Rashika. This is the news live at 9 p.m. on Sansad television, where we get you the day's top stories in the nation and across the globe. Let's begin with today's headlines. Government approves policy on leasing railways land. Pradhan Mantri schools for rising India. 300 cargo terminals to be developed in the next 5 years. India keen on strengthening partnership with Russia on Arctic subjects. At plenary session of Eastern Economic Forum, Prime Minister Modi laid stress on diplomatic solution for Ukraine crisis. NDMC approves renaming Rajpath as Kartavya Path. Prime Minister Modi to inaugurate it on Thursday, unveil Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's statue. Income Tax Department conducts raids against unrecognized political parties, probes suspicious financial transactions and political donations. Rahul Gandhi flags off Congress India Jodo Yatra. 150-day-long journey will cover 3,500 kilometers from Kanyakumari to Kashmir. Let's take a look at today's important news in our flash segment. Cities imbibing spirit of competition helping reduce air pollution, says Environment Minister Bhupendra Yadav. President Murmu to virtually launch Pradhan Mantri TB Mukt Bharat Abhiyan on 9 September to eradicate TB by 2025. Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri meets Secretary General of International Energy Forum in Italy on tackling current energy crisis. ED arrests Ravi Narayan, former CEO of National Stock Exchange, in case related to alleged illegal phone tapping of NSE employees. No proposal to merge NEET, JEE and CUET, says Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. India origin Suella Braverman appointed UK's new Home Secretary, succeeds fellow Indian origin colleague Preeti Patel. Federally funded US tech companies to be barred from building advanced technology facilities in China for 10 years. New rule is part of $50 billion plan to boost local semiconductor industry. NASA to replace faulty hydrogen seal that caused leak in moon rocket Artemis 1. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan expresses deep regret for provocative remarks against female judge in contempt of court case. English Premier League club Chelsea sacks head coach Thomas Tuchel after poor start to season. Chelsea lost 0-1 to Dinamo Zagreb in the Champions League in Tuchel's last match. Now news in detail. The Union Cabinet has approved a policy for long-term leasing of railway land for the PM Gati Shakti program. The government said the move will help set up 300 cargo terminals in the next 5 years and generate 1.5 lakh jobs. The new policy will help provide land lease for a longer period of up to 35 years as against 5 years at present. The new policy will enable the integrated development of infrastructure and more cargo terminals.
ये संशोधन प्रतिवर्ष भूमि के बाजार मूल्य के 1.5% की दर से 35 वर्ष की अवधि तक कार्गो के लिए और कार्गो से संबंधित जो गतिविधियां हैं उसके लिए रेलवे की भूमि की लॉन्ग टर्म लीजिंग का प्रावधान इसमें किया गया है.
The Union Cabinet has also approved the PM Schools for Rising India scheme. At the cost of rupees 27,360 crore for 5 years, the scheme will benefit 18.7 lakh students. Over 14,000 schools, including Kendriya Vidyalayas and Navodaya Vidyalayas, as well as schools run by state governments and local bodies, will be strengthened to emerge as PM Shri schools. The scheme was announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Teachers' Day. These schools will be developed as green schools and the teaching will be more experiential, holistic, inquiry-driven and discovery-oriented.
विश्व की आवश्यकता को ध्यान में रखते हुए ग्रीन स्कूल की कल्पना से बनाई जाएगी। उसके कुछ फीचर्स भी रखा गया है। ये स्कूल टेक्नोलॉजी ड्रिवन होगा। आईसीटी, डिजिटल लैब, डिजिटल लाइब्रेरी, लर्निंग टूल्स भी डिजिटली रहेगा।
Prime Minister Modi said that India is keen to strengthen its partnership with Russia on Arctic subjects. Addressing the plenary session of the Eastern Economic Forum being held in Vladivostok virtually, Prime Minister Modi said that there is immense scope for cooperation in the field of energy as well.
भारत आर्कटिक विषयों पर रूस के साथ अपनी भागीदारी को मजबूत करने के लिए इच्छुक है। ऊर्जा के क्षेत्र में भी सहयोग की अपार संभावनाएं हैं। ऊर्जा के साथ साथ भारत में फार्मा और डायमंड्स के क्षेत्रों में भी रशियन फार ईस्ट के महत्वपूर्ण निवेश किए हैं। रूस कोकिंग कोल की सप्लाई के माध्यम से भारतीय स्टील इंडस्ट्री के लिए एक महत्वपूर्ण भागीदार बन सकता है।
Prime Minister Modi also said that India supports all peaceful efforts to end Russia's conflict with Ukraine. He said that India's Act Far East policy has become a key pillar of the special and privileged strategic partnership between India and Russia. He further said that the Ukraine conflict and the COVID pandemic have had a major impact on global supply chains.
यूक्रेन संघर्ष की शुरुआत से ही हमने डिप्लोमेसी और डायलॉग का मार्ग अपनाने की आवश्यकता पर जोर दिया है। हम इस संघर्ष को समाप्त करने के लिए सभी शांतिपूर्ण प्रयासों का समर्थन करते हैं।
India's goods and services exports crossed $675 billion in the last fiscal year. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has said. He asserted that India is now aspiring to take international trade to $2 trillion by 2030. He said this while interacting with faculty, researchers and students at the Stanford University in San Francisco. Goyal said that by the time India would celebrate the 100th anniversary of its independence, it would be a $30 trillion economy. With a GDP of $3.3 trillion, India is currently the fifth largest economy in the world, only behind the US, China, Japan and Germany.
We had a wonderful interaction on the potential of the US and India working together on innovation and R&D on core areas of commercial interest. So I really am delighted to be at the hub of digital revolutions at Stanford.
The Income Tax Department conducted raids in multiple states against certain registered, unrecognized political parties. The raids were conducted as part of a pan-India tax evasion probe against such parties and their alleged dubious financial transactions. At least 110 locations in Gujarat, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Haryana and some other states have been searched. The surprise action is being taken by the IT Department on Election Commission's recommendation. The poll panel had announced that it was taking action against more than 2,100 entities categorized as RUPP by IT for flouting rules and election laws. Moving on, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the newly renamed Kartavya Path tomorrow. He will also unveil the statue of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose at India Gate on the occasion. According to the government, the move symbolizes a shift from erstwhile Rajpath being an icon of power to Kartavya Path being an example of public ownership and empowerment. These steps are in line with the Prime Minister's second Panch Pran for New India in Amrit Kal that states remove any trace of colonial mindset. Kartavya Path is the stretch from Rashtrapati Bhavan to India Gate. It will have red granite walkways, beautiful landscapes, green spaces, refurbished canals, new amenity blocks, improved signages and vending kiosks. It also includes sustainability features like solid waste management, rainwater harvesting, energy-efficient lighting systems and much more. The entire stretch has been revamped under the Central Vista redevelopment project. The New Delhi Municipal Corporation passed a resolution today to rename Rajpath as Kartavya Path. NDMC had received a proposal from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. It was passed in a special meeting today.
जो प्रधानमंत्री जी के कथा अनुसार 2014 से अब तक की सरकार है वो अपने कर्तव्य बोध से प्रेरित है और इसीलिए किंग्सवे का नाम राजपथ से हटकर कर्तव्य पथ करने का काम किया है.
Congress MP Rahul Gandhi flagged off his party's Bharat Jodo Yatra in Kanyakumari. He claimed that institutions of India are under attack and the country is battling a huge economic crisis, all of which has made a Bharat Jodo Yatra imperative after so many years of independence.
So many years after independence, we are feeling the need, and not just the Congress party, but millions and millions of Indian people are feeling the need of a Bharat Jodo Yatra.
DMK President and Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin handed over the national flag to Congress leader Rahul Gandhi to mark the start of the Yatra. On a visit to Delhi, Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar on Wednesday met President Draupadi Murmu at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. He also had a round of meeting with the opposition leaders. Nitish Kumar met NCP Chief Sharad Pawar on Wednesday. He said that many people are of the opinion that more and more parties should come together to work for the development of the states and the country. Now let's take a look at news from across the nation. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar felicitated the dissidents of the Indian soldiers who lost their lives during the liberation war of Bangladesh in 1971. The Bandbandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Student Scholarship. The Supreme Court will take up on September 27th an application filed by the Uddhav Thackeray camp seeking a stay on proceedings pending before the Election Commission of India over a request by Eknath Shinde faction to be recognized as the real Shiv Sena and claiming the right to use the party's bow and arrow symbol. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said the country's economic growth is a priority for the government as inflation has come down to a manageable level. Job creation and equitable distribution of wealth remain the other focus areas, she said at India Idea Summit. Rajnath Singh, the first Indian Defence Minister to visit Mongolia, was gifted a majestic horse by the country's president on Wednesday, 7 years after Prime Minister Narendra Modi received a similar gift from the leadership of Mongolia. Delhi government has extended the ban on production, sale and use of all types of firecrackers till January 1st, 2023 to contain pollution during the festival season. Delhi's Environment Minister Gopal Rai said that the ban has also been extended to online sale of firecrackers. In the last 24 hours, 5,379 new cases of corona have been reported in the country, while the number of patients under the treatment has come down to 50,594. India's COVID vaccination coverage exceeds 213 crore and 91 lakh. Now news from the world of business and economy. "26 companies on the S&P 500 index are run by Indian origin CEOs, a majority of whom have been born and raised in India, according to a Bloomberg survey. These include Microsoft, Alphabet, Adobe, IBM, Twitter and Starbucks Corporation, among others. The IT department conducted searches at the offices of Delhi-based think tank Center for Policy Research and charity organization Oxfam India. The CPR labels itself as an independent, non-profit and non-partisan institution committed to high-quality scholarship. The government is working on guidelines to be followed by social media influencers who endorse products after taking payment from brands. The proposed norms state that social media influencers who have large followers on platforms like Instagram will now have to declare their association with the brands they endorse. Benchmark BSE Sensex closed 168 points lower to settle at 59,029, while NSE Nifty ended 31 points lower to close at 17,624. Ultratech Cement, Adani Ports, Coal India and SBI Life were among top performers. Meanwhile, global markets were in turmoil as stocks across Asia, US and Europe fell by 1 to 1.5%. Taiwan incurred huge losses of up to 1.8%, while Kospi went down by 1.4%. Time for a short break in the bulletin. On the other side, UK Prime Minister Liz Truss finalizes her team, holds first cabinet meeting. Stay tuned.
क्या आप किसी कानूनी समस्या से घिरे हैं? नहीं पता क्या करें? क्या कहता है कानून? क्या है आपके कानूनी अधिकार? समझिए कानून की बारीकियों को मेरे साथ कानून की पाठशाला में, सिर्फ संसद टीवी पर। क्या आप किसी कानूनी समस्या से घिरे हैं? नहीं पता क्या करें? क्या कहता है कानून? क्या है आपके अधिकार? समझिए कानून की बारीकियों को कानून की पाठशाला में, सिर्फ संसद टीवी पर।
Welcome back to the news. It's time for updates from the Russia-Ukraine war front. UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, submitted its report on the situation at the Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant on Tuesday, days after a team led by their chief, Rafael Grossi, visited the plant. After the report's recommendation, the United Nations has asked both Russia and Ukraine to set up a nuclear safety and security protection zone around the plant. Here are more details.
United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres urged Russia and Ukraine to establish a demilitarized zone around the Russian-controlled Zaporizhzhia power plant.
As a first step, Russian and Ukrainian forces must commit not to engage in any military activity towards the plant site or from the plant site. Zaporizhzhia facility and its surroundings must not be a target or a platform for military operations. As a second step, an agreement on a demilitarized perimeter should be secured. Specifically, that would include a commitment by Russian forces to withdraw all military personnel and equipment from that perimeter, and the commitment by Ukrainian forces not to move into it.
The comments came after International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi warned of an impending catastrophe days after leading an inspection visit to the plant. 2 inspectors from the IAEA mission remained at the plant to ensure its safety. In a detailed report on its visit, the IAEA made recommendations on stopping shelling and establishing safety systems, staff conditions, off-site power, supply chains, emergency preparedness, and communication. Sergei Kislitsia, Ukraine's UN ambassador, called for the withdrawal of Russian weaponry and troops from the site. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country could support the measure if it envisions the demilitarization of the plant. Meanwhile, shelling continued at the nuclear plant even after it was again disconnected from Ukraine's electrical grid earlier this week, triggering fears of a nuclear catastrophe. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Russian President Vladimir Putin hit out at Western nations over what he calls sanctions fever. Speaking at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Putin slammed the West for its aggressive attempts to force modes of behaviors onto other nations. He also placed all the responsibility for the current energy crisis on Europe's leadership. Take a look.
Russian President Vladimir Putin warned the West that it had undermined the global economy. Calling their sanctions against Russia as a futile and aggressive attempt to impose its hegemony, Putin said that the rising powers of Asia are the future. Addressing the Eastern Economic Forum, Putin said that the sanctions had replaced the COVID-19 pandemic as the main threat to the global economy. He added that it would be impossible to isolate Russia, and Moscow would defy the West's attempts to push Russia off the global stage. He said Russia saw more opportunities in entering markets in the Middle East and Iran. He also said that the Russian economy has been able to weather the hardest impact of the sanctions. The Russian president reiterated that his actions in Ukraine were justified, as it was in response to what he called a genocide against the people of Donbass. He asserted that Russia has not lost anything and will also not lose anything from the war. Putin also questioned the landmark grain deal, accusing the West of cheating poor countries. He said that Ukrainian grain exports were not going to the world's poorest countries, but to European nations. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Now time for all the global updates of the day. UK Prime Minister Liz Truss held a first cabinet meeting at 10 Downing Street in London on Wednesday after announcing one of the UK's most diverse cabinets, with key frontline posts going to ethnic minority members of parliament, including Indian origin Suella Braverman as the Home Secretary. Here are more details.
A day after she was appointed Prime Minister by Queen Elizabeth II on Tuesday, British Prime Minister Liz Truss held her first cabinet meeting on Wednesday. Many senior Tories who backed her rival, British Indian former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak, are not in the cabinet. Kwasi Kwarteng was named the first black UK Treasury Chief, and Theresa Coffey its first female Deputy Prime Minister. Other appointments include James Cleverly as Foreign Secretary and Indian origin Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, responsible for immigration and law and order. Another Indian origin minister in the cabinet, Agra-born Alok Sharma, retains his climate action job as the COP26 president, as does Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, in a new top team that is otherwise a complete shake-up of the old guard. London-born Junior Minister Ranil Jayawardene of mixed Sri Lankan and Indian heritage has been promoted as the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Truss has pledged to transform Britain into an aspiration nation with high-paying jobs, safe streets, and where everyone, everywhere has the opportunities that they deserve. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
The United Nations says famine is at the door in Somalia, with concrete indications that famine will occur later this year in the southern Bay region. This falls just short of a formal famine declaration in Somalia, as thousands are dying in a historic drought made worse by the effects of the war in Ukraine. Our next report gives you all the details.
UN humanitarian chief Martin Griffiths on Monday told reporters that he was shocked to the core on a visit to Somalia in which he saw starving babies too weak to cry. A formal famine declaration is rare, and a warning that too little help has come too late. At least 1 million people in Somalia have been displaced by the worst drought in decades. Famine is the extreme lack of food and a significant death rate from outright starvation or malnutrition combined with diseases like cholera. A declaration means data shows more than a fifth of households have extreme food gaps, More than 30% of children are acutely malnourished and over 2 people out of 10,000 are dying every day. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been described as a disaster for Somalia, which has suffered from a shortage of humanitarian aid as international donors focus on Europe. Somalia also sourced at least 90% of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine before the war. Hungry families in Somalia have been staggering for days or weeks on foot through parched terrains in search of assistance. A formal famine declaration would bring desperately needed funding. But tragically, by the time a famine is declared, it's already too late, the UN World Food Programme has said. When famine was declared in parts of Somalia in 2011, the deaths of 250,000 people were well underway. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Now in more world news, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan on Tuesday addressed thousands of supporters in Peshawar. Khan said he would soon organize a mass march to the capital as a culmination of his campaign to force the government of Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif to hold a snap election that Khan hopes to win due to a recent surge in popularity. Israeli troops killed a Palestinian man in a firefight on Wednesday in the occupied West Bank. The violence erupted after Israel carried out an arrest raid in a refugee camp near the city of Tubas. Israel claimed that its soldiers came under fire during the arrest of a wanted person in the Farah refugee camp. The Palestinian health minister said 21-year-old Younes Ghassantai died from a bullet wound to the chest. Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that Germany is well placed to get through this winter with energy. Centre-right opposition leader Friedrich Merz charged in parliament that Scholz's three-party coalition lacks any strategic thinking. An unusually combative Scholz responded that his coalition has worked since it took office in December to prepare for problems that ministers from Merz's party in the previous government failed to anticipate. A trilateral meeting between Japan, the US and South Korea took place in Tokyo on Wednesday to address ways to combat further provocation by North Korea. The US said it is prepared to make short and long-term adjustments to their military posture in responding to North Korea's provocation. The three countries seek the complete denuclearization of North Korea and hope that the country would start dialogue. French auction house Drouot displayed the fossil of a 150-million-year-old dinosaur before it will be put out for sale in Paris in October. Zephyr, a 3-meter-long, 1.3-meter-high Camptosaurus unearthed in Colorado in 2019, could be sold for up to 500,000 euros. Last year, an American collector bought Big John, the largest known fossilized Triceratops, for a record-breaking 6.6 million euros. A look at today's sports stories. India went perilously close to elimination after a 6-wicket defeat against Sri Lanka in the Super 4 match of the Asia Cup. Men in blue now have only a mathematical chance of making it to the final. India would be keenly watching the match being played at Sharjah this evening, where Pakistan has set a target of 130 by Afghanistan. If Pakistan win tonight, that would end all possibilities for India to reach the final. Karen Khachanov battled past Nick Kyrgios in a big-hitting 5-setter, shattering the Australian crowd pleaser's dream of a maiden Grand Slam title. Khachanov triumphed 7-5, 4-6, 7-5, 6-7, 6-4. Khachanov will play Norwegian 5th seed Casper Ruud in the semi-finals. Ruud defeated Italia's Matteo Berrettini 6-1, 6-4, 7-6 to make his second slam semi-final of 2022, having finished runner-up to Rafael Nadal at the French Open. Number 17 seed Frenchwoman Caroline Garcia defeated Coco Gauff 6-3, 6-4 in the US Open quarterfinals to advance to her first major semi-final. Garcia will face number 5 Ons Jabeur in Thursday's semi-finals. That's all in today's The News. Keep watching Sansad Television. Good night.